Hello. I should preface this by saying this is my first virtual presentation, so this is exciting for me. I'm going to talk about xeriscaping today, and it's landscaping with native plants and other plants adapted to using low water. Since you are really in the water business, this should be right up your alley. I was pleased to see your series. You are well aware that precipitation in Texas varies considerably from east to west, and with it, different natural regions. I should also indicate to you that I'll be going pretty fast because this is going to be a video presentation, and if someone's interested, they can go back and look at individual things that I'm mentioning quickly. Okay, so the average rainfall is 32 inches a year, but we know that varies remarkably. And here I took a segment of years so that you could see that it is as high as 50 and as low as 15.8. And when we garden, we must be prepared for the years when we get less than 30 inches of rain, because that happens half the time. So we need xeriscaping, landscaping, so that we don't need as much water. And there are other advantages to native plants. I'm going to introduce you to some native stars. Now, one of the issues, not for everyone in the area, but for many of us, are deer. And so I have divided the presentation so that people that are concerned about deer, because in my column that I write, people are regularly saying me, why can't I plant that the deer won't eat? So, so there they are. This is my front yard, and this is one of my deer. So I'm going to now run through a series of plants that are in Central Texas, native to Central Texas. And I wrote this presentation before February. And so I will probably be adding some things about the effect of temperature as well as water. Okay, so agaves. So just how deer resistant is it? That's after the deer have gotten their horns. They're trying to get the velvet off of their horns. They can do a number on it. And of course, the cold really did a number on them. You're all familiar with bluebonnets, of course. Now, sunflowers, many sunflowers are eaten by the deer, but this is cowpen daisy. And this particular variety it is not eaten by deer. And the Blackfoot daisy, very attractive plant. I love Damanita. It's blooming right now in my yard. And Senecio, also called Texas sage. Down the right, you can see it not in bloom, on the left in bloom. Mealy blue sage, this is one of my favorites. It spreads naturally. And if you cut it back after it blooms, it'll bloom again for you. So why are we emphasizing native plants? Well, they need less water, and they are, I'm sorry. Okay, all right. They're pest resistant, so you don't need pesticides. Of course, we've all been through the caterpillar session this spring, so yeah, there are some pests that will get to even the natives. They attract wildlife, and the wildlife needs the berries and parts of the plant to eat. And they have a mutual relationship because the wildlife will then spread those plants. There's less maintenance, although the first year that you plant them, you will need to water new plants. And then after they're established, I very rarely have to water my native plants. And they can take a temperature extreme. Yeah, well, we've had a test of that last February, and my natives pretty much did make it through, although a lot of them, like the kidney wood tree, it got ruined at the top, but it's coming up at the bottom, so it did make it through that 0 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay, so some of the following natives are not deer resistant. Those that are deer resistant, I have put this picture. These are the penstemon. Oh, it was beautiful this year. It seemed to really like the conditions we had. The picture on the left is what it looks like in August, so you think it's not going to make it, but then the next spring, here it comes. Here's another one that went through a really hot spell and very dry, and this is Engelmann's daisy, and it on the right you can see, here it comes. This is on the left, you can see the plant when it's in full bloom, and mine is blooming right now. And it spreads very readily, but the deer do like it. Ruellia, there are hybrids of this that are not native, but it comes from an original native plant. Greg's mist flower, oh, this is lovely with the butterflies that are attracted to Greg's mist flower. Texbenia, oh, this one the deer do not eat, so you can put this one out where it's not fenced in, but the asters are eaten by the deer. Some of them, I sometimes see asters. Oh, right now we have the Indian blanket blooming. I should say this is early May when we're making this video. So that's when I'm saying it's blooming right now. It's early May. Turk's cap won't bloom until later in the summer. And then another thing people ask me is, what can I plant in the shade? And this one likes to grow in the shade, but it will be eaten by the deer. Now, this is relatively deer resistant, but people say, oh yeah, well, I've seen it eat the flowers on my lantana, so you know how it goes. I like this plant a lot, American beautyberry. I've seen it growing like down along Cypress Creek with berries, but the deer will eat it if it's in a neighborhood where there are lots of deer. The Esperanza or yellow bells, I've seen deer nibble on that as well. Oh, this year we missed this Texas mountain laurel, the flowers we missed. The plant made it through the freeze, but not the flowers. The autumn sage here, Salvia greggii, lots of salvia. The different sages, the deer are pretty much not interested in eating the sages. And the Mexican bush sage. Now, here's an example of when I do these kinds of talks, I'm always learning myself. It's true, the deer don't bother this Mexican bush sage, but it's not native, so I learned. But it's still a good plant to have. Lenheimer senna is a plant of the fall. It spreads readily and the deer don't bother it. And it certainly doesn't need to be watered. Now this picture I took, this is the Lenheimer senna in the front. And in the back, I'm not going to be talking about any of all of these lovely plants, the trees and the grasses, but there are lots of native trees and plants and grasses that should also be considered in your landscape. Oh my, the Palo Verde had a rough time with that 0 degrees Fahrenheit. The deer don't bother it. It has too many thorns. It has lovely flowers, but mine has recently, from the bottom, started to come up. So there are the flowers. It'll be probably a couple of years before I see any flowers on mine. Now this is the kidney wood that I mentioned earlier that I said got it. The top half of it is dead, but it's coming up from the bottom. This is the kidney wood. The bees love this plant, and it kind of depends. How are we doing on time?
We're good to go about 5 minutes.
Okay. And Texas redbud, no, that it managed pretty well. I notice you have some here on the grounds here. Some ground covers. I've put in a few plants that are ground covers. You may recognize this from over at Arizona. That's why I took this picture. I like this ground cover. The deer will nibble on this, but obviously it's made it pretty well there. You may not have ever really looked closely at the little flowers, but the little tiny flowers on the straggler daisy. Oh, it's also called horse herb. The verbena can form lovely patches, and the deer don't bother it. And the Mexican primrose, I find the deer eat my Mexican primrose out in front, but I just love the patches of pink along the sides of the road. Well, you say, well, the deer are out on the roads, but if it's a heavily traveled road, the deer won't be able to survive the traffic, so the plants can form nice areas. Now, here's a vine, and a very attractive vine, the cross vine, Bignoniaceae. And the deer don't bother mine. So I've been stressing native plants. They need less water. They're pretty much pest resistant, so you don't need pesticides. And they attract the wildlife, and they also need the wildlife to spread their seeds. They require less maintenance, although at first, when you first plant them, you should put a wire around even the ones that the deer aren't supposed to bother, because the deer are just curious animals. And for the most part, they can take our temperature extremes. We hope we've shown you some attractive native plants that you will want to add to your xeriscape. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. We appreciate it. And for everyone on the line, we've got, I'm assuming, Ms. Jackie, that we'll be able to have your presentation or those photos available if people have questions for us.
And one thing I forgot to mention is Charles said that there would be there's a brochure that I wrote. I had it. Oh, there it is. Can you hand it to me, Phil? Thanks. It doesn't look like this on the, but they're going to put it. There we go. Like I said, this is my first virtual presentation. Okay, what I've done is list in the order that they are presented in this slide, in this presentation, so that people can see exactly what the names were of the different plants, or since it's a video, they can go back and look at it there too. So yes, all of that is supposed to be visible. Did I answer your question?
It sure did. Thank you. And thank you for your time this evening. We want to remind everybody that we have this is our second presentation in the Waterwise speaker series. We've got one every other month. Next month in July, we'll have a discussion about climate and weather trends by John Nielsen Gammon. And then in September, we'll have an update on Wimberley's One Water School. And then in November, we will have a discussion on the benefits of land conservation and water resources. So those are the items that are up next on the series. Charlie, did we have anything else or any questions maybe that have come in for our presenter?
We do not have any questions on the chat. If anybody has any questions, we have Ms. Mattice's contact information, and we encourage you to go to the website when we get it posted on our education and outreach page. There's a 2021 Waterwise button you can push and retrieve and watch and enjoy all of the presentations that have been made and will be made in the future.
Very good. All right, thank you.